Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our morning book buzz. We're now recording, so I'm just going to let Jen go ahead and take it away. We're live, Jen. Can you hear me? You can take it away.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Yep.
Welcome to our morning book buzz. We're so happy to be here again with another amazing morning of books and coffee, our favorite things. I'm Jen Childs, and I'm happy to tell you about some of my favorite books, and I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. I'm Elizabeth Fabian.
And hello, I am Sharnell Johnson.
Okay, so I'll just say that a reminder that all of our slides will indicate what formats, our books come in various formats. They will have a key that indicates hardcover, trade, large print, ebook, and audio download CD. Also, the happy orange E indicates that there is an eGalley available on both, most likely both NetGalley and Edelweiss. If you don't see it on one, please check the other, but we try and have your eGalley of choice available. And then we are so thrilled to have an amazing Spring Book and Author Festival. This is our third festival. We're going to be back on Thursday, April 7th. Um, another amazing lineup of author panels, e-galley downloads, opportunities to request print galleys. It's just going to be amazing. We have some early authors that are locked in, including Blake Crouch. We have Sandra Cisneros and Gabrielle Zevin, with many more amazing authors to sign on to come. So we hope you'll register for this free day-long event. Everything will be archived, so if you miss something with your registration, you'll be able to access it for 3 months. So please do join us.
And for some other amazing author programming, I hope that you've already heard about or attended some of our events in our exciting new year-long AAPI Communities in Conversation series. Our amazing colleague Miriam Tullio has worked in partnership with Publishers Weekly and the University of South Carolina's Augusta Baker Endowed Chair to put together 12 months of programming that feature live online conversations between writers, creators, and librarians that center and celebrate Asian American and Pacific Islander voices, books, cultures, and experiences. The next event, if you want to mark your calendar right now, is Tuesday, April 5th at 1 p.m. Eastern, and it features Sheldon Simeon, the author of Cook Real Hawaii, in conversation with Michelle Young of the Waimea Public Library. I would love to see that in person. I would love to go to Waimea. And if you'd like to register for this event or see the full lineup for the year, or even if you'd like to watch some of the on-demand programs that you may have missed, please feel free to go to the tiny URL on the screen. That's tiny URL AAPI C and C 2022. And a reminder that all our URLs will be in our wrap up. So if you missed that right now, you will get it in our email following up. So please join us for these fantastic conversations.
As I'm sure most of you know, or all of you, I should say, today is Dr. Seuss's birthday. So, to help educators celebrate with their students, Random House Children's Books is offering a guide with activities and book recommendations and much more that will keep kids reading, learning, and having fun. To learn more, visit SeussHatsOffToReading.com. And up first, we have great titles that are celebrating strong women. And I have The Child is the Teacher, which is about the pioneering educator and activist who changed the way we look at children's minds, Maria Montessori. Born in 1870 in Italy, she would grow up to embody almost every trait men of her era detested in the fairer sex. She was self confident, strong willed, and had a fiery temper at a time when women were supposed to be soft and pliable. She studied until she became a doctor at a time when female graduates in Italy provoked outright scandal. She never wanted to marry or have children, the accepted destiny of all women of her background in late 19th century middle class Rome. And when she became pregnant by a colleague of hers, she gave up her son to continue pursuing her career. At around age 30, Montessori was struck by the condition of children in the slums of Rome's San Lorenzo neighborhood and realized um, she realized what she wanted to do with her life, which was change the school and therefore the world through a new approach to the child's mind. Despite the resistance she faced from all sides, scientists accused her of being too mystical, the clergy accused her of being too scientific, traditionalists accused her of giving children too much freedom, and anarchists accused her of giving them too much structure. So she would garner acclaim and establish the influential Montessori method, which is now practiced throughout the world. Through a thorough, nuanced portrait of this often controversial woman, The Child is the Teacher is the first biographical work on Maria Montessori, written by an author who is not a member of the Montessori movement, but who has been granted access to original letters, diaries, notes, and texts written by Montessori herself, including an array of previously unpublished material.
And next is a great story on nurses, and it's called Sisters of Mokama. It's the never before told story of 6 intrepid Kentucky nuns, their journey to build a hospital in the poorest state in India, and the Indian nurses whose lives would never be the same. So, New York Times editor Jyoti Thotam, her mother was part of this extraordinary group of Indian women. Born in 1946, which was a time when few women dared to leave their house without the protection of a man, she left her home by herself at age 15 and traveled to Bihar, an impoverished and isolated state in northern India that had been one of the bloodiest regions of the partition. She wanted to train as a nurse under the tutelage of the determined and resourceful Appalachian nuns who had started the Nazareth Hospital. The hospital was a radical undertaking. It was run almost entirely by women who insisted on giving the highest possible standard of care to anyone who entered their doors, regardless of caste or religion. She was so fascinated by her mother's story that Totham set out to discover the full story of the Nazareth Hospital, which was established in 1947 by these 6 nuns from Kentucky. These nuns had no knowledge of Hindi, and they were aware that they might never see their families again. But they traveled to the small town of Mokama, and they were determined to live up to the pioneering spirit of their order. In Sisters of Mokama, Totham draws upon 20 years of research to tell this inspiring story for the very first time. She brings to life the hopes, the struggles, and the accomplishments of these ordinary women who did extraordinary things, both the American women and the Indian women who succeeded against all odds.
The Red Zone is a searching, galvanizing memoir about blood and love, how learning about her period, PMS, PMDD, and the effects of hormones on moods transformed her relationships to a new partner, to family, to non blood kin, and to her own body, from the essayist and author of Women. Chloe Caldwell's period has often felt inconvenient, uncomfortable, and even painful. It's only once she's in her 30s, as she's falling in love with Tony, a musician and single dad, that its effects on her mood start to dominate her life. Spurred by the intensity and seriousness of her new relationship, it strikes her. Her outbursts of anxiety and rage match her hormonal cycle. Compelled to understand the truth of what's happening to her, Chloe documents attitudes towards menstruation among her peers and family, reads Reddit threads about PMS, attends a conference called Break the Cycle, and learns about premenstrual dysmorphic disorder, PMDD, which helps her name what she's been going through. For Chloe, healing isn't about finding a single cure. It means reflecting on underlying patterns in her life, her feelings about her queer identity, and writing persona in the context of a heterosexual relationship, how her parents' divorce contributed to her issues with trust, and what it means to blend a family. The Red Zone is a candid, revelatory memoir for anyone grappling with controversial medical diagnoses and labels of all kinds. It's about coming to terms with the fact that, along with proper treatment, self acceptance, self compassion, and transcending shame are the ultimate keys to relief. It's also about love, how challenging it can be, how it reveals your weaknesses and wounds, and how, if you allow it, it will push you to grow and change.
Okay, next up is a perfect read for Women's Histories Month, The Great Stewardess Rebellion. It was the golden age of travel, and everyone wanted in. As flying boomed in the 1960s, women from across the United States applied for jobs as stewardesses. They were drawn, of course, to the promise of glamorous jet setting, the chance to see the world, and an alternative to the traditional occupations like homemaking, nursing, and teaching. But as the number of stews grew, so did their suspicion that the job was not as picture perfect as the ads would have them believe. Sky Girls had to adhere to strict weight limits at all times, gain a few extra pounds, and they'd be suspended from work. They couldn't marry or have children. Their makeup, hair, and teeth had to be just so. Girdles were mandatory while stewardesses were on the clock. And most importantly, stewardesses had to resign by age 32. Eventually, the stewardesses began to push back, and it's thanks to their trailblazing efforts in part that working women have gotten closer to workplace equality today. Nell McShane Wolfhart crafts a rousing narrative of female empowerment, the paradigm shifting 60s and 70s, the labor movement, and the cadre of gutsy women who fought for their rights and won.
From the sky to the sea, to our next book. Let's go offshore. So grab your wetsuit. Next is Women Making Waves, Trailblazing Surfers in and Out of the Water. This is a visually stunning journey across the world's oceans, and it features soulful surfers living with a purpose. Um, it is a celebration also of the sisterhood of surfing and features extraordinary women from the United States, the Philippines, Mexico, Australia, Senegal, Japan, France, and beyond. Author Laura Einzig profiles more than 24 inspiring female surfers from around the globe, from activists to artists, who are breaking new ground on land and finding joy and healing and community in the water. There's Maya Gabieri, a Brazilian woman who surfed the biggest wave of anyone in 2020. Bonnie Wright, the British actress and activist and author. Risa Mara Machua, who runs a free surfing camp in Mexico for local children. And Zara Nuruzi, an Iranian exile who found peace on the water in Australia. Through these candid interviews on the transformational power of surfing and through gorgeous photography of beautiful beaches and surf shacks and favorite breaks, Einzig captures the life-altering strength and resilience that these women discover in their connection to the waves. And I'll end with a very cool fact in the spirit of girl power. The Top Tier Pro Surf Tour is one of the only US-based sports that requires equal pay for men and for women.
Awesome. Okay, another rousing true story of trailblazing women is offered up in Wise Gals. In the wake of World War II, there were four agents critical in helping to build a new organization that we now know as the CIA. Adelaide Hawkins, Mary Hutchinson, Eloise Page, and Elizabeth Sundmeyer were called the Wise Gals by their male colleagues because of their sharp sense of humor and even quicker intelligence. They were not the stereotypical femme fatale of spy novels. They were smart, courageous, and groundbreaking agents at the top of their class, instrumental in both developing innovative tools for intelligence gathering and insisting in their own unique ways that they receive credit and the pay that their expertise deserved. Meticulously researched and beautifully told, Holt uses firsthand interviews with past and present officials and declassified government documents to uncover the stories of these four inspirational women.
When We Fell Apart is a profoundly moving and suspenseful drama that untangles the complicated ties that bind families together or breaks them apart. As a young Korean American man's search for answers about his girlfriend's mysterious death becomes a soul searching journey into his own bicultural identity. When the Seoul police inform men that his girlfriend Yoo Jin has committed suicide, he can't be sure it's true. She was successful, ambitious, happy, just on the cusp of graduating from university and claiming the future she'd always dreamed of. Men, on the other hand, born to an American father and Korean mother, has never felt quite the same certainty as Eugen about his life's path. Growing up, or after growing up in California, where he always felt too Korean to fit in, he moved to Seoul in the hope that exploring his Korean heritage would help him find some sense of purpose. And when he meets Eugene, little does he know that their carefree relationship will set off a chain of events with tragic consequences for them both. Devastated by Eugene's death, Min throws himself into finding out why she could have secretly wanted to die, or did she? With a controlling and powerful government official father and a fraught friendship with her alluring and destructive roommate, Sora, Eugene's life was much more complicated than she chose to reveal to men. And the more he learns about her, the more he begins to doubt he ever really knew her at all. As Eugen's story, a fraught exploration of selfhood, coming of age, and family expectations, collides with Min's, the result is an engrossing page turner that poses powerful, urgent questions about cultural identity, family bonds, secrets, and what it truly means to belong. And fun fact about the author, when he was in high school, he actually worked for his local library in Nyack, New York. It's pretty cool.
Very cool. All right, Chris Bajalian, his books are always book club gold, and The Lioness is no exception. In this riveting historical thriller, a luxurious African safari turns deadly for a Hollywood starlet and her entourage. We're in Tanzania, 1964. Kate Barstow, an A-list actress, and her new husband, David Hill, decide to bring their Hollywood friends to the Serengeti for their honeymoon. They envision giraffes gently eating leaves from the tall acacia trees, great swarms of wildebeest crossing the Mara River, and herds of zebras storming the sandy plains, while they drink gin and tonics, of course. The wealthy Americans expect civilized adventure, fresh ice from the kerosene-powered ice maker, dinners of cooked gazelle meat, and plenty of stories to tell over lunch back on Rodeo Drive. But what Kate and her glittering entourage do not expect is this: a kidnapping gone wrong, their guides bleeding out in the dirt, and a team of Russian mercenaries herding their hostages into Land Rovers, guns to their heads. As the powerful sun gives way to night, the gunmen shove them into abandoned huts, and Kate Barstow, Hollywood royalty, prays for a simple thing: to see the sun rise one more time. Jodi Picoult said of The Lioness, the best possible combination of Hemingway and Agatha Christie, a gorgeously written story about the landscape and risks of Africa, whose edge of your seat plot makes it impossible to put down.
And next is the Seamstress of New Orleans. Against the backdrop of the first all-female Mardi Gras crew in turn of the century New Orleans, Diane McPhail's mesmerizing historical novel tells of two strangers separated by but bound by an unexpected secret, and of the strength and courage women draw from and inspire in each other. The year 1900 ushers in a new century and the promise of social change, and women rise together towards equality. Yet, rules and restrictions remain, especially for women like Alice Butterworth, whose husband has abruptly disappeared. Desperate to make a living for herself and the child she carries, Alice leaves the bitter cold of Chicago far behind, offering sewing lessons at a New Orleans orphanage. Constance Halstead, a young widow reeling with the shock under the threat of her late husband's gambling debts, has thrown herself into charitable work. Meeting Alice at the orphanage, she offers lodging in exchange for Alice's help creating a gown for the leap year ball of Les Mysterieuses, the first all female crew of Mardi Gras. During leap years, women have the rare opportunity to take control in their interactions with men and upend social convention. Piece by piece, the breathtaking gown takes shape, becoming a symbol of strength for both women, reflecting their progress toward greater independence. But Constance carries a burden that makes it impossible to feel truly free. Her husband, Benton, whose death remains a dangerous mystery, was deep in debt to the Black Hand, the vicious gangster who controlled New Orleans' notorious Storyville district. Benton's death has not satisfied them, and as the Mardi Gras festivities come to an end, a secret emerges that will cement the bond between Alice and Constance, even as it threatens the lives they're building.
And next is a novel of the American West, Woman of Light. It's a dazzling epic of betrayal and love and fate, and it spans 5 generations of an indigenous Chicano family in the American West. It's from the author of the National Book Award finalist of Sabrina and Karina. Luz, Little Light Lopez, is a tea leaf reader and a laundress, and she is left to fend for herself when her older brother Diego, a snake charmer and a factory worker, is run out of town by a violent white mob. So Luz is left to navigate 1930s Denver on her own. She begins to have visions that transport her to her indigenous homeland in the nearby Lost Territory. She recollects her ancestors' origins, how her family flourished, and how they were threatened. And in the end, it's up to her to save her family stories from disappearing into oblivion. This book captures the widely entertaining and complex lives of the Lopez family as they fill the pages with a multi-generational Western saga. It's also a transfixing novel about survival and family secrets and love, and it will definitely appeal to those who love novels by Isabel Allende, Min Jin Lee, and Colson Whitehead, and has tons to discuss for all your book clubs.
A discarded painting in a junk pile, a skeleton in an attic, and the greatest racehorse in American history. From these strands, Pulitzer Prize winner Geraldine Brooks braids a sweeping story of spirit, obsession, and injustice across American history in Horse. Kentucky, 1850. An enslaved groom named Jarrett and a bay foal forge a bond of understanding that will carry the horse to record-setting victories across the South. When the nation erupts in civil war, an itinerant young artist who has made his name on paintings of the racehorse takes up arms for the Union. On a perilous night, he reunites with the stallion and his groom, very far from the glamour of any racetrack. New York City, 1954. Martha Jackson, a gallery owner celebrated for taking risks on edgy contemporary painters, becomes obsessed with a 19th century equestrian oil painting of mysterious provenance. And Washington, D.C., 2019. Jess, a Smithsonian scientist from Australia, and Theo, a Nigerian American art historian, find themselves unexpectedly connected through their shared interest in the horse, one studying the stallion's bones for clues to his power and endurance, the other uncovering the lost history of the unsung black horsemen who were critical to his racing success. Based on the remarkable true story of the record-breaking thoroughbred Lexington, Horse is a novel of art and science, love and obsession, and our unfinished reckoning with racism. Perfect for readers of Barbara Kingsolver, Jane Smiley, and Alice Hoffman.
And I am very excited to close out our book club recommendations for today with a new novel from Linda Holmes, the NPR Pop Culture Happy Hour podcast host and the best-selling author of Evie Drake Starts Over. Flying Solo is her new and charming novel about a woman's journey of self-discovery and new love. So our main character, Lori, is smarting from her recently canceled wedding and she's about to turn 40. And so she returns to her hometown in Maine to handle the estate of her great aunt Dot, who was a spirited adventurer and lived to be 93. She is going through Polaroids and pottery, and she finds a mysterious wooden duck at the bottom of a cedar chest. Lori's curiosity is piqued, and especially so when she finds a love letter to the never married Dot that ends with this line. And anyway, if you're ever desperate, there are always ducks, darling. Soon after, though, the duck disappears under suspicious circumstances, and Lori feels compelled to find out why anyone would take a wooden duck and why Dot kept it hidden to begin with. So suddenly, Lori finds herself swept up in a righteous caper that has her negotiating with antiques dealers and con artists and going on after-hours dates at the local library and reconnecting with her oldest friends and first love. Lori is a heroine you will root for from page one, and Flying Solo is a wonderful story about growing up, coming home, and learning to make a life for yourself on your own terms. I hope you love it.
Next up, we wanted to share some books that were perfect for the International Trans Day of Visibility that is coming up. The first book is Dead Collections. This is for readers of Melissa Broder, Kevin Wilson, and Andrea Lawler's Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl. When Archivist Soul meets Elsie, the larger-than-life widow of a moderately famous television writer who's come to donate her wife's papers, there's an instant spark. But Soul has a secret. He suffers from an illness called vampirism and hides from the sun by living in his basement office. On their way to falling in love, the two traverse grief, delve into the internet fandom they once unknowingly shared, and navigate the realities of transphobia and the stigmas of carrying the vampire disease. Then, when strange things start happening at the collections, Soul must embrace even more of the unknown to save himself and his job. Dead Collections is a wry novel full of heart and empathy that celebrates the journey, the difficulties, and joys in finding love and comfort within our own bodies. Under his previous name, Isaac won the Lambda Literary Award for LGBT science fiction, fantasy, and horror for his first novel, The Breath of the Sun.
Next is a new collection from the award-winning poet of The Year of Blue Water. Dream of the Divided Field is a collection of poems on heartbreak and transitions. The poems in Yanyi's latest collection suggest that we enter our old selves and enter and exit our old selves like homes. We look through windows and recognize some former aspect of our lives that is both ours and not ours. We long for what we had, even as we recognize we can no longer live there. Informed by Yanyi's experiences of immigration, violent heartbreak, and bodily transition, Dream of the Divided Field explores the contradictions that accompany shifts from one state of being to another. In these tender, serene, and ethereal poems, Dream of the Divided Field examines a body breaking down and a body that rebuilds itself in limitless and boundary-shifting ways.
Next up is Burn the Page, an inspirational memoir meets manifesto by Danica Roem, the nation's first openly trans person elected to U.S. state legislature. Danica made national headlines when, as a transgender former frontwoman for a metal band and a political newcomer, she unseated Virginia's most notoriously anti-LGBTQ 26-year incumbent, Bob Marshall, as state delegate. But before Danica made history, she had to change her vision of what was possible in her own life. Doing so was a matter of storytelling. During her campaign, Danica hired an opposition researcher to dredge up every story from her past that her opponent might seize upon to paint her negatively. In wildly entertaining prose, Danica dismantles all the stories her opponents tried to hedge against her, showing how through brutal honesty and loving authenticity it's possible to embrace the low points and even transform them into her greatest strengths. This book will not just encourage people who think they have to be spotless to run for office, but also inspire all of us to own our own personal narratives, as Danica does.
Bad Girls is gritty and unflinching, yet also tender, fantastical, and funny. A trans woman's coming of age tale about finding a community among fellow outcasts. Born in the small Argentine town Vero, Camilla is designated male, but begins to identify from an early age as a girl. She is well aware that she's different from other children and reacts to her oppressive, poverty stricken home life with a cowed mother and abusive alcoholic father by acting out with swift consequences. Deeply intelligent, she eventually leaves for the city to attend university, slipping into prostitution to make ends meet. And in Sarmiento Park, in the heart of Cordoba, she discovers the strange, wonderful world of the trans sex workers who dwell there. Taken under the wing of Auntie Encarna, the 178-year-old Eternal, whose house shelters this unconventional extended family, Camilla becomes part of their stories of who fled his country's wars, a mute young woman who transforms into a bird, an abandoned baby boy who's who brings a twinkle to your eye. Camila Sosa Villada's extraordinary first novel is a rich, nuanced portrait of a marginalized community, their romantic friendships and squabbles, difficulties at work, aspirations, and disappointments. It bears witness to these lives constantly haunted by the specter of death, by disease or more violent means at the hands of customers, boyfriends, or the police, yet full of passion, empathy, and insight. A thrilling portrait of political terror and the violent pleasures found in warehouses, bathrooms, and dungeons across New York City, X is a novel that delves into the psyches of characters on the margins. The world is ending, and down and out sadist Lee spends their days working for a big corporation and their nights wandering the streets of Brooklyn listening to true crime podcasts. But everything changes when Lee is dragged to a warehouse party by their best friend, where they find themselves in the clutches of the seductive and bloodthirsty X. When Lee seeks her out again, she's nowhere to be found. Amid the steady constriction of civil rights and the purging of migrants and refugees, the U.S. government has recently begun encouraging the semi voluntary exporting of undesirable citizens, the radicalized and descendant, and the ungovernable. Word has it that X may be among those leaving. If Lee doesn't track her down soon, she may be gone forever.
And we wanted to present Mad Honey, even though it's not out till October. It is such a great partnership. Mad Honey is a new novel co-written by Jodi Picoult, the best-selling author of Wish You Were Here, and Jennifer Finney Boylan, the best-selling author of many books, including She's Not There. Some of you may have heard the great backstory for this novel, but if you haven't, I'll share it now. The concept of this book came to Boylan when she woke up from a dream about co-writing a book with Jodi Picoult. And when she tweeted about it, Picoult reached out and said, let's do it. And so it began. And in Mad Honey, our main characters definitely know what it feels like to start over. Olivia McAfee has a picture perfect life. She's living in Boston, married to a brilliant cardiothoracic surgeon. She's raising their beautiful son, Asher. But that's all upended when her husband reveals a darker side, and she ends up back in her sleepy New Hampshire town, living in the house she grew up in, and taking over her father's beekeeping business. Lily Campanello is familiar with do-overs too. When she and her mom relocate to New Hampshire for her final year of high school, they both hope it will be the fresh start that they need. And for a short while, these new beginnings are exactly what all the characters need. Their paths cross when Asher falls for the new girl in school, and Lily can't help but fall for him too. But then one day, Olivia receives a phone call. Lily is dead, and Asher is being questioned by the police. Olivia is adamant that her son is innocent, but as the case against him unfolds, she realizes that he's hidden far more than he's shared with her. Mad Honey is a riveting novel of suspense. It's an unforgettable story of love and a moving and powerful exploration of the secrets we keep and the risks we take in order to become ourselves. And I think there's an e-galley ready already, so if you want to read it, go request it now.
Very, very exciting. Um, okay. I Was Better Last Night is a poignant and hilarious memoir from the cultural icon, gay rights activist, and four-time Tony Award-winning actor and playwright Harvey Fierstein, revealing never-before-told stories of his personal struggles and conflict, of sex and romance, and of his fabled career. Mr. Fairstein's candid recollections provide a rich window into downtown New York City life, gay culture, and the evolution of theater, of which he's been a defining figure, as well as a moving account of his family's journey of acceptance. Library Journal said of this book, in this richly detailed book, award-winning playwright and actor Fierstein tells his life story. His memoir is filled with evocative characters and scenes, and his wit and wayward dialogue shine. Written with verve and enthusiasm, Fierstein's memoir will be a must-read for his fans and for theater lovers and anyone who appreciates pop culture.
Saved offers an unprecedented glimpse into the mind of the legendary film star Diane Keaton. The book begins with an homage to movies, curiously to old B-grade horror flicks such as Attack of the Puppet People, which sounds terrifying, um, a passion that manifests in a collection of rare film stills showing large-brained aliens with crab-like hands and terrified men with eyes growing from their shoulders. In a second chapter or collection, the reader encounters Cracked, a startling selection of crinkled and neglected negatives, found portraits that speak of the past through the broken lens of time. Even more intimately revealing are photographs taken by the star herself, be they of pigeons while on downtime from the set of Reds in London, or of the greeters of Hollywood Boulevard caught at the other end of her Rolleiflex camera lens, now revealed as the seen, the experienced, the remembered, and the cherished. But this is only the beginning, the surface of a very deep dive into the well springs of one of the great creative talents at work today. The book is an invitation to dive in.
That is a very different Diane Keaton than I am used to seeing. Next up is Tough by Terry Crews. Terry Crews, as many of you know, is the beloved actor known for his scene-stealing roles in Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Everybody Hates Chris, and Sorry to Bother You, and his role as the host of America's Got Talent. Now in Tough, Crews offers the deeply personal story of his lifelong obsession with strength and how, after looking for it in all the wrong places, he has finally found it. Terry Crews spent decades cultivating his bodybuilder physique and bravado. On the outside, he seemed invincible. He escaped an abusive father, he went pro in the NFL, and he broke into the glamorous world of Hollywood. But his fixation on appearing outwardly tough eventually turned into an exhausting performance in repressing his emotions, and it got the better of him, leading him to addiction and threatening the most important relationships in his life. Now Cruz shares the raw, never before told story of his quest to find the true meaning of toughness. He examines the arenas of his life where he desperately sought control: masculinity, shame, sex, experiences with racism, relationships. He recounts his setbacks and victories while when he was facing and deeply uprooting ingrained toxic masculinity and confronting his insecurities and painful memories. The result is not only a gripping story of one man's struggle against himself and how he finally got his mind right, but it's a bold indictment of the cultural norms and taboos that ask men to be outwardly tough while leaving them inwardly weak. And it offers a model for anyone who considers himself a tough guy but feels unfulfilled, and anyone ready to achieve true and lasting self mastery. And now I'm excited to talk to you about a very fun book. If you are a certain age like me, you maybe, probably, definitely tried to do the lift from Dirty Dancing in a swimming pool. You try to work the phrase, I carried a watermelon, into normal conversation. And you have an 80s soundtrack that is so firmly committed to memory that you can recognize each song from the first chord. So if you are like me, you're going to be very excited about Out of the Corner, which is a deeply spirited and candid memoir from one and only Jennifer Grey. This is a beautiful account where Jennifer Grey takes readers on a tour of her experiences that shaped her, from her childhood as the daughter of the Broadway and film legend Joel Grey, to the surprise hit with Patrick Swayze that made her America's sweetheart, to her inspiring season 11 win on Dancing with the Stars. Throughout this intimate narrative, she takes us from her preteen days in 1970s Malibu to her quintessential roles in 1980s films like Red Dawn and her breakout performance in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Who can forget that? And with self-deprecating humor and frankness, she looks back on her romantic adventures in Hollywood and shares the devastating fallout from the plastic surgery procedure that caused the sudden and stunning loss of her professional identity and career. Grey inspires us with her hard-won battle back. She reclaims a sense of self, where she's in this culture and business that can be really unforgiving of with the definition of female worth, and she finds at last her own true north and starts a family. And Michael J. Fox says, we all know Jennifer Grey as a talented actress, but Out of the Corner introduces us to her as a gifted writer. So get ready.
Not to date myself, but Time of Your Life was our prom theme song, and we were very happy about it at the time. Okay, next up, another great celebrity, Selma Blair. The first story that Selma Blair Beitner ever heard about herself is that she was a mean, mean baby. With her mouth pulled in a perpetual snarl and a head so furry it had to be rubbed to make way for her forehead, Selma spent years living up to her terrible reputation, biting her sisters, lying spontaneously, getting drunk from Passover wine at the age of 7, and behaving dramatically so that she would be the center of attention. Although Selma went on to become a celebrated Hollywood actress and model, she could never quite shake the periods of darkness that overtook her, the certainty that there was a great mystery at the heart of her life. She often felt like her arms might be on fire, a sensation not unlike electric shocks, and she secretly drank to escape. Over the course of this beautiful and at times devastating memoir, Selma lays bare her addiction to alcohol, her devotion to her brilliant and complicated mother, and the moments she flirted with death. There is brutal violence, passionate love, true friendship, the gift of motherhood, and finally, the surprising salvation of a multiple sclerosis diagnosis. In a voice that is powerfully original, fiercely intelligent, and full of hard-won wisdom, Selma Blair's Mean Baby is a deeply human memoir and a true literary achievement. Glennon Doyle said of Mean Baby, Blair is a rebel, an artist, and it turns out, a writer.
Since the Karate Kid first crane kicked its way into the pop culture stratosphere in June of 1984, there hasn't been a week Ralph Macchio hasn't heard friendly shouts of wax on, wax off, or sweep the leg. Now, with Macchio reprising his role as Daniel LaRusso in the number one ranked Netflix show Cobra Kai, Ralph Macchio is finally ready to look back at the movie that came to define him and give the fans something they've long craved. The book will be Ralph Macchio's joyful and celebratory reflection on the legacy of the Karate Kid in film, pop culture, and his own life. It will be a comprehensive look at a film that shaped him as much as it influenced the world. Macchio shares the untold story behind his starring role, the innocence of the early days, the audition process, and the filmmaking experience itself, as well as takes readers through the birth of some of the film's most iconic moments. Overall, this is a nostalgic story that will bring readers back to the day they first met Daniel LaRusso, Johnny Lawrence, and Mr. Miyagi for the first time, but also provides a fascinating lens into how our pasts shape all of us and how the past can come back to enrich one's life in powerful, surprising, and wonderful ways.
These books make me want to go and do a movie marathon,
Right?
Me
revisit my
too.
childhood. And because these are such iconic figures and voices, who could we expect to read the audiobooks but the authors themselves? Jennifer Grey, Terry Crews, Harvey Fierstein, Selma Blair, they will all read their own audiobooks when they're available. And if there are those of you who are looking out for celebrity reads for your younger readers, you can start with Seth Meyers' very own I'm Not Scared, You're Scared, read by Seth Meyers, and Just Help, which is the book by Justice Sonia Sotomayor and read by the lovely Kerry Washington. So there are celebrity reads for all the readers in your life.
Great. Well, I think that's almost a wrap. Thanks everyone for watching us today. A reminder that the follow-up email will have all of the information for signups and the slides, etc. We are going to skip the April morning book buzz because of our book and author festival on April 7th. So I do hope you'll sign up for that. Look for the registration link in the email to come. It's going to be a fantastic day of books and authors and library chatting. So I hope you'll join us, and then we'll see you back here, Morning Book Buzz, on May 4th. And you can register right now so you don't forget. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening.